In the meantime, we want to go back to the story of President Trump attending a hearing today in the D.C. Circuit Court. His attorney, one of his attorneys, Alina Habba, joins me now. Alina, good to have you with us. Welcome. Always great to see you.
Thanks. Good to see you, Martha.
So tell me a little bit about the immunity argument that was made in the court today. We saw the president come out. We heard from him that he believes that he has complete immunity. And yet some of the questions that we heard from the three judge panel, I should say, were surrounding whether or not that is an absolute situation, because they brought up a number of different instances and asked, would that provide immunity for a president? In other words, if it has to do with an election and arguing an election, does that fall under the immunity that we've seen prior presidents get for national security actions that they have taken? And the word that we've gotten from attorneys watching this is that they are not sure this D.C. court is going to go along with the argument that in this situation, the former president is immune. What was your takeaway from what you heard in there today?
I've argued presidential immunity, Martha, ad nauseum, because I represent the most targeted former president in American history. I can tell you right now, absolute immunity, or what we call presidential immunity, is an immunity that exists to not only protect presidents, but protect Americans. And that was the arguments that we heard today. If you all of a sudden change an immunity that has been in place forever, that has been in place for very good reason, then how are presidents to protect the country? How are presidents to speak to the press and address the nation when they're afraid of defamation in civil claims, when they're afraid of criminal charges for having military take action against our enemies? It is hypothetical after hypothetical of extreme situations that are not the current situation. That's what I heard today. And I think our counsel did a great job of presenting what has already been established law. Presidents have to perform in their duties with absolute immunity from claims, because while they are sitting in president, Martha, it is not just, and I want to explain this in plain English, I always try and do that for non-lawyers, it is not just acts within his employment as the sole member of the executive branch. It is also for acts in the outer perimeter. It is for decisions he has to have discretion to make. If you have no discretion, then why are you elected as the president of the United States? That is the bottom line. The president was the president. He should be afforded immunity. And frankly, if the D.C. court does not make that decision, that would be mind-boggling to me, to be honest.
So how long, tell me about the time frame, because obviously all of this is layered in an election year. This will likely go to the Supreme Court, and their decision is likely to have bearing on a number of these cases. So what do you expect in terms of timing, and do you think it's going to be delayed, and for how long?
Well, let's not be twisted on why we have a timing issue. There really isn't a timing issue. The only issue is the one that the Democrats have created because they're concerned about losing in 2024. So they've created this epic proportion of rush. It's a consistent rush. It's putting pressure on the Supreme Court. It's putting pressure on these circuit courts to rush to decisions because they create a sense of urgency that frankly does not exist but for the fact that they are losing in the polls. So we are looking at this hectic rush. However, if you look at the decision with Jack Smith in the Supreme Court recently, they are calling them out on it. The rush to ruin an election is not, frankly, a rush at all. It is an urgent election interference claim that they've all colluded to do, in my opinion, and I've seen it time and time again. Presidential immunity is a slam dunk argument. If this case is not decided the way I think, frankly, the law states it should be, then yes, it will go to the Supreme Court. They will probably have to rush a decision because I'm sure prosecutors that we've seen that are Soros-backed will rush it. It's unfair, frankly, to the Supreme Court that they're being put in this position, but the law is very clear, and I think it's an easy decision to make.
All right, talk to me a little bit about the situation in Georgia and the revelations that surround the appointment of a prosecutor, a close relationship between the two. We heard the former president talk about this a bit today. He thinks that this essentially makes the Georgia case one that has to fall apart based on this. Explain your take.
My take is very much the sentiments of the president. I will say that these are obviously allegations that, if proven true, are extremely troubling and do create an ethical problem for Fannie, for, frankly, the entire the entire office. If a prosecutor's office is tainted by political animus, which we already know it has, and then they're tainted by taking taxpayer dollars and going on vacations, if those allegations are true and she's hiring people that she is sleeping with and putting them in positions to attack a political enemy, I can't even begin to start on where ethically that is problematic, let alone let's go to the case, which we know has no merits, but was obviously motivated by a group of people that have ill intent. So we've already known that. If these allegations, though, against Fani are in fact proven, she's going to have a problem on her hands, ethically, personally, and frankly, for this case.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see how that develops. I just want to ask you one more question about Jack Smith, because the president earlier today said that there were real concerns about the viability of his bringing this case in the first place and whether or not he is a constitutionally appointed special counsel with valid precedent. Explain that.
Sure. Special prosecutors, just so you understand, are supposed to be independent counsel. They are not supposed to be independent counsel that is brought on solely to go under against a political campaign or a political opponent, the leading opponent. A lot of constitutional issues here exist. Ethical issues, again, exist. As we've seen, all of these people, they report to AG Garland, right? But they also automatically report to Biden. So let's not forget that. The real person that holds the strings to all these puppets is the current president of the United States. And we keep talking about Soros backing, but let's not forget about Democrat backing. Let's not forget about Washington backing. We are not supposed to have that. They're supposed to be independent. They are not supposed to be individual private sector individuals like we've seen with Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, the same thing. They brought somebody who has ties to Hunter, ties to the Biden family. That is not special counsel. That is not independent counsel. The definition itself is not that. So we're going to see challenges, I'm sure, to that. I think this is really making America sad. I think it's making the American public concerned for their safety, for the integrity of the justice system. And I hope for the sake of our children that we can correct it. And I don't think we can with this administration.
Yeah, we see the challenges to putting the former president on the ballot in a number of places around the country. So far, the candidates that we have spoken to say that they want to run against the former president without these impediments in the way and let the American people decide. So we'll see where that goes. Alina Habba, thank you very much. Always good to see you.
Good to see you, Martha.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.